Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We just got done checking out the first video for this week's theme of unique vocals, and we're going to move into some special selections as we typically do on Mondays. Today's special selection comes at us from Anthony. It says, "Hey Bryan, I'd love to hear you talk about Lingua Ignota, particularly Do You Doubt Me Traitor?" It's all in caps. You got to say it like that. I don't want to provide too much context, but this is from her 2019 album Caligula. Her third album, Sinner Get Ready, came out a month or so ago and was a bit different from Caligula, but I still think Do You Doubt is probably the most complete look at everything her music is about, both stylistically and thematically. And I'm ready to dive into this because it's a very cool title. Got a lot of cool points right there. Yeah, let's see what's going on here. We got a 9.5 minute song. Let's dive in.
How can you doubt me now? How can you doubt me? How can you doubt me now?
Yeah, really cool atmospheric stuff going on in the background. Little scrapes, pitter patters.
Every stone on every mountain is etched with my name.
It's interesting that fuzz that comes in sounds like a shaker of some sort. Almost like muted, compressed sleigh bells. It just cuts off. There's no decay on the sound. Interesting production choice.
If you rise up to heaven, I'll turn the sun to blind you. If you sleep deep in hell, I have chains.
Yeah, dude, this is heavy.
How can you
Completely selling it with his vocal delivery too.
How can you doubt me? How can you doubt me? How can you doubt me? Satan, get beside me.
Very theatric. This whole thing so far has just been a massive theatrical delivery on every aspect. Interesting slide there.
How do I
starting to see some of this move into the musical aspect for the first time. Interesting, one of these tones I think is clipping so much it's actually killing the sound at points.
All this is ended. As cruel as I
This sounds like a huge bass drum in the background, something you'd use in like an orchestra. But it has so many effects on it that it actually feels like it's taking the place of a bass instrument rather than a percussive one.
But that nothing can My friends all wear your colors.
I love how each of these vocal tracks has its own starting and stopping point.
I smell you bleeding, and I know
And just the production on the vocal tracks, the harmony of it all, the placement in the song.
Do you doubt me, Throw your body in the
I've been trying to. Wow. Definitely showing some of this anger. It reminds me of bagpipes.
And I don't eat, I don't sleep, I don't eat, I don't sleep.
Wow. So that was something. And the thing is, it's not, there's definitely some sections that are kind of dense as far as instrumentation goes, and sort of width, but most of the song is rather simplistic. It really is about the delivery and just the precision in creating specific feelings and emotions and atmospheres and vibes exactly where they need to be placed to deliver what they want, to get the audience in that mindset that they're going for. It is wow, definitely a unique take that I don't think I've heard before. It walks an interesting line between, it's almost some folk elements to it. There's some hymn like elements to it. There's a lot of acoustic, not acoustic, chanting, which I guess kind of goes along with the hymn, vocal chants. But there's also some modern sort of industrial vibe to some of it too, and then some avant garde concepts showing up. And I would even say maybe a hint of like post rock with the wall of sound, tons of effects, really going for that super wide, repetitive oppressiveness that I associate with that genre. Um, yeah, it's just, here's the interesting thing. I will never. Okay, I'm not going to say that. I will probably listen to this song again, especially if there's a live version, because something I'm going to talk about in a second. I will probably not listen to this song many more times in my life, uh, because it's not something that really interests me on a casual level. However, this is extremely artistic, and I greatly appreciate and enjoy it on that level. But that leads me into this idea. Some music I feel is designed to be consumed daily in a sense. Especially a lot of modern popular music. It's supposed to be, easy to listen to, enjoyable while you're listening to it, makes you want to come back to it. We have catchy hooks, infectious music, great groove and rhythm, stuff like that. There's definitely those albums that you put on repeat and just continue to come back to them, day after day, week after week. I don't think, at least based off of this song, that her works are like that. At least pertaining to this song, I look at it more as performance art. And because of that, I think I kind of did a disservice to myself listening to the studio version. I think this is definitely one of those songs that is best enjoyed and best listened to live. And I think that because there's a lot of elements in here. Ooh, how would you go about doing the backing tracks? I think I want. I'm going to touch on this later, but just to, or I'm going to dive into this more later. But I think one of the more haunting elements of the chanting stuff at the end, it showed up at the beginning as well too, is that she did the harmonies herself. I've mentioned in the past, I really love when backing tracks and harmony vocals are done by other band members, because it's allows, first of all, to get some differences in vocal timbre, so you get those nice textural harmonies as well as the note harmonies. But I also just really like how it's more replicable live, and I love watching musicians do double and triple duty as well. I think it's just fascinating to see somebody do so much musically, and for them to play an instrument and do the vocals as well. It's just, to me, it's a real treat when there's multiple vocalists, especially if you're going to implement harmonies in your music. This is one of the rare occasions where I think thematically it makes more sense to do multiple vocals on her own to do multiple tracks, multiple recordings of it. I just don't know how that's going to be done live, other than a backing track, which I assume, you know, visual or audibly would be the same effect, but is going to take away a bit because uh, I'm like pulling my brain in a billion different directions. There's so much I want to talk about here. I'm going back to this idea of this being performance art and really being enjoyed live. I feel like there's so many elements of this that are open to interpretation. It feels a bit like soloing in jazz. Um, there's a lot of parts. At least, well, the music seems fairly static, and I want to point that out. A lot of this performative aspect I feel comes from the vocals, and it's because she, even in the studio version, implements a bunch of stuff that makes it feel like, at least the first half the song before we hit the chanting part at the end, makes it feel like it was done in a single take with whatever imperfections or additional elements were included in the take. We have seemingly random places where breaths are taken. We have repeated syllables and words on occasion, not every time, because a lot of it is cyclical. It's very sort of like a mantra there in in the middle of the song, where she continues to repeat basically the same things over and over and over, and a lot of it feels like it was improvised, at least to me. Now maybe these specific inhales, the ones that she chose to do specifically, maybe with a little bit of emphasis to get into the recording. Maybe some of the ways she repeated things, maybe she had everything planned out and everything went according to plan. But at least the perceived end result, to me, feels like a single take that was improvised. And it leads me to think that each performance is going to be a little different. And that's where the performative art comes in. It reminds me a lot of jazz, where, yes, you can buy an album you can buy a recording and listen to the song, but you're only listening to one version of the song. It really pays to go see, if you can, the musicians live, because you're going to get a completely different experience than the one you heard on the record. And just being there with this oppressive sound on you and hearing a new version of this song, assuming that she does improvise a bit in her work. Um, it's going to completely transform the song, and then you're going to have that presence there of being being around this massive sound. It's just I don't think this is a song where listening to it in headphones in my room is going to deliver the best experience. This is, like I said, it's performance art. You can, even like if you watch uh performance art on YouTube or whatever, you get a DVD or something, it's never the same as being there. There's something about that collective experience of being in the presence of this work of art. And that's kind of where I'm feeling with this song, is that it really benefits from viewing it live. Um So yeah, the I guess we're gonna talk about the vocal harmonies next. At the end, the chanting. I really love this part. First of all, it is the first major break, I would say, uh, in the vocal lyrics. The first half of the song was comprised a lot of repeating sentences, repeating ideas, repeating phrases. And this is the first time we begin to hear a series of thoughts. I think it's also interesting that this is where her voice is most powerful, giving way to so many vocal tracks supporting each other and creating this wall of vocals. Even better so is that each vocal is not identically created. They start at different points, they stop at different points. There is little vocal runs that some voices do that others don't. We have some really nice classical ideas where the chords that are created, we often have a stable or sustained note, maybe even two of sustained notes where they are just the same thing from start to finish. And then we have movement placed around it where other voices might change their notes in relationship. And we get these different note relationships because we have a static note and then we have other ones getting closer or further away from it. And we do that with 4 or 5 voices, and it just creates these gorgeous, gorgeous moving ideas. Um, but, anyways, tying back into the vocal delivery, it seems I would say the first half of the song is a sort of mental breakdown. Obviously, the song is about uh, being betrayed and possibly being undermined in that betrayal. It's right there in the title, Do You Doubt Me, Traitor? Um, and the beginning seems to be coming to terms with this, and it is the cyclical concept of asking these questions: where did things go wrong? Why do you doubt me? I do all of this for you, and you don't return it, kind of stuff. That comes from the I don't eat, I don't sleep cyclical thing. Just showing the sacrifices that she makes to show her commitment, and then being undermined or tossed away or whatever happened narratively. But once she comes to terms with it, about 60% through to the song, so about I guess about 3 minutes left, we hear these very concrete, directed statements that tell a return to control over her mental capacities. And it's no longer about falling into this rabbit hole of asking questions of where things went wrong, or how she could have been better, or more devoted or whatever. But it is control of the situation, I think, is the idea. It's no longer a lack of control, and you can hear this in the vocal delivery. It's no longer cracking. It's no longer becoming almost unhinged. I talked about this in the Tala, I think it was Tala, that we checked out in Spooky Week, that having these voices, the vocal deliveries that start out clean and kind of descend into and slowly crack and turn into these high screams is a fantastic way of showing a sort of unhingedness, a losing grip with reality kind of idea, and or losing control, I think works better in this case. But when she gets control back of the situation, not only does her voice become more stable, it becomes stronger, it becomes more powerful, and it becomes amplified, and that's where all the different voices come from. And that's what I was saying about the live performance, and about this being one of the few times where I would think that having multiple vocalists would actually detract from it, is that narratively this feels like the moment where her voice is the most powerful, where she is taking control of her story, of the narrative, and saying, I don't have to bow to you, or whatever the narrative is. I still didn't pick up on what exactly this traitorous action was, but there's definitely power in her words. If you look into vocals, it she gets very upset. But there's also power in the delivery, and part of that comes from, like I said, the width of her voice. There's so many voices; it commands the song, and it shows a strength, or a return to strength, I would say. And that absolutely would not come through if she had a backup choir, or whatever, she had a bunch of backup singers to do the other parts. But you can't improvise with backing tracks. Well, the backing tracks can't improvise, I suppose, is a better way to say that. If she pre-records them, they're static, and that would be the only way to get that delivery where all of the harmonies are her voice in a live setting. um, So I'm not sure. Maybe it's just the first half, I think, that really benefits from more of an open interpretation to the way that the lines are delivered. Another thing I found interesting at the end is that unlike a lot of modern music where harmonies are perfectly aligned, they start at the same point, they end at the same point. Any sort of movement in between is perfectly created to ensure that the harmonies are specifically, the chords that they're going for are specifically created. This is a very interesting interpretation of that, where each line feels like a separate voice rather than a harmony. They have different starting points, they have different stopping points. Sometimes a note will just keep hanging on. And it's not even, yeah, this voice ends and then a bar later this voice ends. If you listen real closely, you can even hear the startups are, just a hair off. They're not engineered, over engineered, I would say, to specifically start on the downbeat. And I really love that. It adds a little bit of imperfection and some humanity into this idea that just works so well. It makes it feel like it's not robotic, which I think is necessary, because if they had gone the route of perfectly starting, perfectly stopping, making sure that every note is specifically created. Because another thing is, if you're listening to some of those vocal wavers and vocal runs, some of them dive into a little bit of extra color. They utilize notes a bit outside of the key. They create a little bit of dissonance, but it's usually not for long. It's kind of a very tasteful way of including some color and spice into these chords, but it also adds that little bit of humanity. Otherwise, if everything was just perfect, it would come off as very robotic, very inhuman, which is the complete opposite of the purpose of this ending section. It's supposed to be a return to understanding we are human and we have control over our futures and our current situation, and taking that strength back for self, whatever. Just understanding that you have control over the situation. And I think it's such a subtle touch, allowing, like I said, sometimes you don't even really notice it if you're not looking for it. And I was specifically looking for it, but the attacks are just, slightly off. And it's just like a tts, tts. It's close, but not perfect. And that is just, it's such a nice little touch there at the end. Um, I think that covers everything with the vocals, the performance. I mean, the song right here is obviously vocal driven. The music sits in the background for a lot of this. There isn't a lot of melody going on. It really is mostly atmosphere and textural stuff going on. The only time the music starts to take a little bit of center stage is in the middle, when it's getting very wide and very big, sort of wall of sound stuff, which is, to me at least, supposed to be uh, the epitome, the what is it? The highest point of the tension in the story, um, where her emotions and feelings and insecurities are beginning to overwhelm her voice. And it's right before the point when she can dispel it all and take back control. It is, uh, again, it's done for atmospheric and textural stuff. Even though it has taken the spotlight in the song, there still isn't any sense of strong melody there. It really is about, the artistic viewing of what this voice, the piano and whatever else was going on in there, what the purpose of it was, narratively, rather than laying down melody lines. So I don't think it's any coincidence that most of this analysis is probably going to be devoted to the vocals. I don't know if I have a lot to talk about with the music, although there are some themes I want to bring up. Um, but yeah, to me, this is a vocal performance right here, and it shines. It is just, oh man, it is haunting. It's powerful. I think it tells a great story. And I definitely need to dive into the lyrics. I picked up a few at the beginning because, like I said, it's very repetitive. But there at the end, when she was, dropping these huge lines and really fleshing out the story and taking control over the narrative, that's also when the musical aspect, which is all the harmonies and stuff, were becoming to get very interesting. So I, I had to stop listening to the lyrics a bit and dive into what was going on there. Um, Instruments, though, instruments are interesting. I wonder how much of this is acoustic, because I mentioned there at the end we have that huge bass drone, and there is a note to it. The note is held out. The note is held out long enough to fade out almost naturally, I would say. But the attack of it is this big boom. It sounds like a big orchestral bass drum. And I do wonder if maybe they didn't take a bass. Hopefully, I mean, not hopefully. I think it'd be cool if they had, if they recorded their own bass drum. But I suppose it would work well as a sample as well. Um, and then obviously they put some effects on it to increase the length of the sound and maybe put a little bit of compression on it to give it that extra bite. But that, at least right there, is an acoustic instrument, whether they recorded it themselves or used something that was part of a sample pack or a prepackaged drum kit or whatever. Um, we also have a piano in here, and I don't remember the voices at the beginning. Um, hmm. But I want to say almost everything in here is acoustic and could be played live, of course, with microphones, recording them, going into, a computer or whatever, and modulating the sound however it needs to be. But I think it would be really awesome to see this live. Not just the vocal performance, which of course I've already talked about, would be phenomenal, but having all these instruments around and doing that as well. Um, There's one more thing I wanted to talk about. And I don't remember. The middle section. So the part I already mentioned, the middle section is, I think, the height of sort of the lack of control. Uh, Man, I used the term for it earlier, and I completely blanking on it. Um, Oh yeah, the highest point of the issues with security and feeling that the main character has any power over the situation, and this is the part where the piano's playing and it's kind of overlapping everything. We have these really big drony sounds. We have this chaotic piano playing. I absolutely love this section because prior to this we did have a heavy, burdening, oppressive sound, but it wasn't chaotic. It was very rigid, actually. And it also had, I do need to touch on this later as well, is all of the ambient noises. I don't know if I have a lot to say about it, but I do need to touch on it because it intrigued me from the beginning. Yeah, but it's very rigid, and it really just provides this weight to the song. But there's a part 3, 4 minutes in when everything starts to get real chaotic. The piano volume starts to swell. The piano's starting to play notes all over the place. It becomes very chromatic, very atonal. Um, and I absolutely love how that lines up with what's going on in the vocals, because even up to, a minute prior before that, the vocals had already begun to crack. They've begun to get into that high scream. There's definitely chaos being introduced into the vocal line, but the music hadn't followed along with that yet. There was still this idea of control underlying the vocals. And slowly those insecurities in the music began to rise up and, explode out into this chaos as well. And it's just such an interesting way to go about that I think amplifies the narrative aspects of the song, because instead of having the entire song follow the same trajectory, we can kind of split it up into multiple ideas and watch one aspect, watch one aspect go into sort of an unhinged, chaotic element before the next one follows. And it can show a gradual shift into an idea rather than sort of a static one where we were at this level, now we're at this level, now we're back at this level kind of idea. Really, just really smart composition, uh, deciding to split that element and do it that way. And then the last thing I think I want to talk about is those atmospheric stuff. I don't know if I have much to say about the sounds themselves. but I love that they were there. It adds so much production to the song as well as characteristic. Uh, they could have easily left them out, and I don't think it would have changed my mind on the song if I didn't know they were there. Some alternate universe where those aspects weren't there. I think I still would have walked away from this song with the same reverence and is that the right word? I don't know. But anyways, with the same appreciation for the song. I think they would have delivered the same exact ideas without them. But with them there, they add so much little elements of characteristics that create a unique tone to the song that I don't. I think that's the big part where I said, I haven't really heard anything like this before, and then I went listing all the elements that I noticed from other genres. But it really is when they come together, it creates a very unique sound, and I think having those atmospheric sounds is key to that, especially some of the more unnatural elements. I mentioned at the beginning there's this fuzz that's created, and to me, it sounds like sleigh bells or just any belt of bells or a shaker full of little bells, but compressed so much that the characteristics of the timbre are replaced almost entirely with a buzz. But the interesting thing is that when it starts, the very beginning of the line, it sounds like somebody just starting to shake. We don't have any residual sound coming into it, right? It sounds like a first attack, but at the very end, it's cut off immediately. There's no fade out, there's no decay on the sound, and that is not how bells work. And it creates an almost inhuman, not natural, not of this world kind of idea to it that adds a little bit of supernatural element, at least for me, to the beginning of that song that ties in heavily to the weight and oppression of the heavy music going on around it. And it really adds a little bit of that tinge of the unknown to that aspect of the song, especially coming into it. I didn't know what I was in store for, and I was trying to figure it out. And then that comes in. I'm like, wow, this is really pushing into a direction of unknowing, uncertain ability. Uh, and it's those little touches. I love them, and they also fill in a bit of the gaps without adding extra music, which I think is important for this song specifically because there's so many elements that you need to have those spaces to provide the weight. I've mentioned contrast before. If you want your heavies to sound heavy, you put them up against some lighter stuff. And that works so well in these micro instances as well. You get these heavy bits of weight and then a beat, maybe a beat and a half of rest, and then you come back and you slam back down with the weight again. And it's these little pockets of contrast that keep the song feeling very weighty. But there's a few sections where they cut out and you can hear a clack or something falling. It at one point it sounded like somebody putting a pencil down on a music stand. It's these little things that keep the song interesting in those gaps without adding in music that's going to detract from the contrast. It is just every bit of this is so meticulously thought out and then allowed for areas of non-meticulous thinking out and allowing more of a live performative aspect to take place. And I think it's just this perfect balance of both of those to tell a story that is just phenomenally done. I'm impressed and intrigued, but I don't really know that I want to listen to this again. Like I said, it's not one of those songs that I'm going to come back to that's just so good and it's so catchy and it's stuck in my head. It's art. You experience it once, it gets stuck in your head. You're never going to forget about it, but it's not something you're necessarily going to want to come back to often. But I do think I need to check out these albums in whole. And yeah, with that, Anthony, I think. Yes, Anthony. Fantastic, man. Thanks so much for this one. Another band to put in my ever growing list of stuff to check out. All right, that's where you guys come in. No, those are my thoughts on Lingua Ignota's Do You Doubt Me, Traitor? is for you guys come in, hit me up in the comments. Let me know if you enjoyed this or not. Anything that stuck out to you that maybe I didn't touch on. If you have any insight into it or the lyrics, the story that's being told, I think I'm pretty much on the nail, hitting the nail on the head. That's the phrase. I think I'm hitting the nail on the head as far as the story goes. But like I said, I only picked up 10% of the lyrics at the end, so I could be a bit wrong. Yeah, like I said, any context into that though, let me know. Hit me up. Comments. Above the comment section is a description box, and there is a link for Linktree. It'll take you to a menu with everything related to the channel. You can follow me on Twitter, support me through Patreon, join the Discord community, as well as a bunch of other stuff. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I'll be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC as usual. We'll be checking out more unique vocals as well as looking at another special selection. Until next time, remember to be critical but not cynical of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.